This section heading is called Configuring Hadoop. So now what we're going to do within this section is we're going to take the master node out of operating in what is known as pseudo-distributed mode and instead configure it for multi-distributed. So now going over what each of those modes mean again. So we can see over here pseudo-distributed mode means that all of your daemons are running on the same system. And in fully distributed, this is where all of your daemons are running on 2 or more hosts. So what we're going to do is we're going to configure ours for a 4-node cluster. Now the reason we're going with this type of design right here is we're demonstrating out how you should separate out the master daemons from the slave daemons and also separate out the secondary name node from the name node. So now the reason we're doing that. So your slave nodes will always consist of these 2 slave daemons. And what your slave nodes will also do is they will house the data that's within HDFS. Your name node is the manager of HDFS and will store metadata files that's used to retrieve the data on the slave nodes. Now your name node in Hadoop version 1 is a single point of failure. So what we do is we essentially store a copy of those metadata files over to another device that's known as secondary name node. So that way there, when or if this name node does fail, you can recover the data by transferring these metadata files to a new name node. So now before I go and close this image, take a mental note of the name that corresponds to each of the daemons. So now the way that we're going to take the master node out of operating in pseudo-distributed mode and have it operate into multi-distributed is by editing some of Hadoop's configuration files. So the first thing I'm having you do within the lab is actually to list those files. The first file that we're going to edit is going to be core site XML. So we're going to use Nano as our editor and then core site XML. So inside of here we're going to change the location of our name node. So we can see over here that it's localhost, and as we specified within the topology, it's going to reside on master. The next file that we're going to edit is going to be mapred site XML. So inside of here, we're going to define the location of our job tracker. So this is also going to reside on the master host. And then this next file is going to define the number of replicas. So we said by default that your Hadoop cluster wants to store 3 replicas inside of it. So that's not only the default value, but it's also the recommended value. So now because we have 2 slave nodes within our cluster, we're going to adjust this up 1 because at some point we would actually like to meet the recommendation, as we scale up the number of nodes. Alright, so these are the 3 files that we use to define pseudo-distributed mode, and we edited those. But now if we go back to our topology, we see that we haven't defined the location of the secondary name node as well as the slave daemons. So what we're going to do in order to essentially define that is we're going to use 2 files, the masters file and the slaves file. So first we'll define where the slave daemons are going to reside by editing the slaves file. So first let's see what's in that file. So if we cat slaves, we're going to see that right now they're running on localhost. And the way that we're going to put those slave nodes in there, which are slave 1 and slave 2, is basically we're going to redirect it in. So now when you're adding those hosts inside of this file, they're supposed to be on separate lines. So the way that we're going to do this using echo is we're going to say echo, and then we're going to start a string. We're going to say slave 1, we'll press enter, and then we won't complete the string until we add the next host on the next line. And then we'll redirect that into the file that's called slaves. So now we'll verify that we do have 2 hosts on separate lines, and we do. And now the next file that we're going to edit is going to be the masters file. So the name of this file is a little misleading. So what we use this file for is to denote the location of your secondary name node. Now once again, let's first view what's in the file. So inside of masters, we're going to find that it's running on localhost, and the way that we're going to specify it to reside on a different host is we're going to essentially overwrite what's in there. So we'll do that using echo once again. So we're going to say that it's now going to reside on snapshot. We'll redirect that into the file, and in doing so we will replace what's in there. And then we'll hit the up arrow key and we'll verify that we now see snapshot within there.